accompanying the reader on a long hike, in which I point out this and that particular feature here and there, drawing upon my long experience of working with the text, and highlight moments of epiphany for me, linking ideas together when possible, while always wondering and asking what it is that you, the reader, might make of it all. In teaching Marx over the last 50 years, I have been incredibly fortunate to teach it to all sorts of different groups and audiences. I have learned immensely from the very divergent ways in which people can make sense of what Marx is saying. This is, of course, a tribute to the rich complexity of the texts, that they can speak so directly to so many different people living in such radically different situations and coming from such radically different cultural and intellectual traditions. The Grundrisse is by far the most interesting and the most difficult book by Marx to work with. It is a set of notes that Marx was frantically writing to himself at a rather frantic time. Marx, throughout his lifetime, employed different modes of writing depending upon his audience. These can be categorized into 4 types. There was first the writing style adopted in his journalism, in his contemporary commentaries, and in his correspondence. It is plain-spoken and colloquial, even as it takes on difficult matters with some conceptual grace. Some of his serious writings on political economy were prepared for publication, such as Volume 1 of Capital. There he is greatly concerned to use a language which he thinks his audience will understand. That audience was the literate fraction of a working class, the majority of whom were illiterate. The literate fraction was self-taught, quite sophisticated, and being autodidacts, unlikely to be subject to the disciplinary tropes of formal education. So while Capital may appear to us as a difficult book, somewhat above the capacity of the average undergraduate in formal education to easily comprehend, this would not necessarily be true for the autodidact artisans that Marx was concerned to influence, primarily in Britain and France, but also in the United States and beyond. My own hope in my Marx project has been to recast Marx's language in a way more accessible to contemporary student audiences, along with the autodidacts. Yes, they still exist in the labor unions and social movements. The third kind of writing is more experimental. It is constructed as a voyage of discovery, where Marx will unfold an argument, sometimes deploying novel and even arcane concepts for anyone willing to follow. This is characteristic of the manuscripts out of which Engels constructed both volumes 2 and 3 of Capital. The fourth kind of writing is Marx writing purely for himself, using whatever tools and ideas that he has in his head, prepared to unleash a stream of his own consciousness, to set down possibilities and potential interrelations that may or may not turn out to be important in his more considered studies. This last is the predominant style of the Grundrisse, and it is this that makes it such an exciting, frustrating, imaginative, and sometimes boringly repetitive text to work with. Marx is, in short, just talking to himself. It is not sufficient to understand his language, which is distinctly his own. It is also important to understand his mode of thinking, which is, to put it mildly, somewhat elusive. But this is the form of writing that dominates in the Grundrisse. One of the things that makes reading and interpreting the Grundrisse so difficult is determining whether Marx is advancing his own conceptual framework and interpretations, or simply reporting upon that of others. For example, at the very outset of the introduction, he states, "Individuals producing in society, hence socially determined individual production, is of course the point of departure." We can read this as saying that this is where he, Marx, proposes to start, or as Marx saying that since this is where bourgeois political economy typically starts, then this is where he is obliged to start his own critical interrogation. The outcome is all